Friends, bedwetting is a common phenomenon. Bedwetting happens more commonly in children where it is recognized as a health issue from the age group of 6 to 15 years. So, if I'm talking to parents today whose children are between 6 to 15 years and they continue to do bedwetting at night, either once at night, once a week, multiple times at night, or few times even at month, it probably is an entity which is more of a disease process, more of a maturation process, which should be taken care of and handheld in the journey to probably get them right dry. And how do we do it? So it's important for parents to identify that if a child is at the age of 6 years and beyond, up to the age of 15 years, there can be gradual improvement in the bedwetting of few children, but not in everybody. And therefore, all children who are bedwetting at night need to be taken on a journey of a therapy and possible cure. What am I talking about? To reach the society of parents, schools, and small children, and including all the ambassadors who hear this wonderful platform and get to identify that children and bedwetting is not going to be left alone from today onwards. We want children to be dry for better good mornings. It is important to identify that there is a kind of a mechanism where the brain and the bladder rhythm has not developed completely. Normally what happens between 3 to 5 years with a toilet training that the parents, especially mother, gives, she is in close touch with the girl or a boy child and helps them to identify that they need to go to the washroom and empty their urine. But that's in daytime. Daytime we are under gradual control mechanism being developed by our parents, by a behavioral mechanism which is being imprinted upon the brain. But that may not happen at night when we all, including you and me, are deep asleep. That's a time when we are deep asleep. The mechanism of brain and bladder has not developed completely in terms of the rhythm. The rhythm of understanding has probably not developed, and that could lead to the subject of bedwetting, which in medical terms is called as enuresis. Enuresis or bedwetting is a stigma to many parents and to many children. Imagine there could be two groups of children. Between the age of 6 to 9 years or 10 years are those children who may not be so motivated to be dry. And they are deep sleepers, difficult to wake them up. Parents also may not be able to land up in the behavioral therapy thinking that the elder sibling or somebody in the family has gradually dried up as age changed. And therefore, there's a lethargy in the society, lethargy with parents who are not so motivated by the medical fraternity and by understanding, or the awareness of the subject is missing. People think it will gradually get well, but not in everybody. So let's take the scenario of 6 to 10 years old children who are bedwetting even twice or thrice at night, or twice or thrice a week, or every night. And the parents sometimes get to identify that the child bedwets at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Sometimes bedwets on Mondays and Fridays and Sundays, and therefore there is a huge social stigma. They cannot be going out for staying out, going to relatives' homes, and the child is gradually growing up. The child gets probably scolded, the child gets up in the morning wet, or probably gets up at night, changes his clothes and goes to sleep again. But all this has a lot of effect on his performance, on his morale and his entire development. So is the child developing well? Perhaps no. There's a lot of subconscious development issues which is happening in a child who is a bedwetter. And bedwetters can be completely transformed into dry children just by understanding what am I talking about. From the child between 11, 12 to 15, 17 years are more motivated children. They have got an issue of shame, they have got a body image, they're gradually getting into puberty, and they are more motivated individuals. So when I interview that kind of a children, I understand that they want to get dry themselves compared to their parents who were more inclined to or were more forced to by medical community. Such children who are bedwetting need to see their pediatricians, need to see their urologist, and probably take the journey of identifying what is happening. So enuresis or bedwetting is a phenomenon of children. It can also happen in middle-aged and elderly people who had a lot of liquids at night, had a deep sleep and probably bedwetted and therefore land up in panic because they could be in a hotel, they could be at relatives' homes or maybe traveling somewhere in a holiday. But when I concentrate on child and bedwetting, there are two kinds of treatments we take up. We need to evaluate whether the child is also wetting in the daytime. That means, is a child a polysymptomatic kind of situation, or it is only a monosymptomatic where the monosymptoms are only at night. So those children who also wet in the daytime, who actually have urgency frequency of urination and probably would wet their undergarments in the school, are those children who are polysymptomatic situation of enuresis or bedwetting, and they will have to be identified and treated both in the day and night. So there's a huge amount of behavioral therapy which goes on in terms of training the parents, training the children. whereas those children who are only bedwetting at night. So the behavioral therapy goes on in terms of limiting the nighttime water intake, using an alarm therapy, getting up 2 hours after they go to sleep. The food and the water intake, the last dinner and water intake should have a gap of at least 2 hours. Should not be continuing to take a lot of beverages in the evening, especially coffee, tea, and a lot of cola drinks, etc. In that way, a discipline is brought about in children. So at the age of 16, 15 years, that vast age group of patients, the children undergo a suffering where their entire morale, their entire capabilities, their performances in school and their performance and the growth is quite different. So imagine those children whose bedwetting completely stopped by a therapy which is a pharmacotherapy. That means your pediatrician, your urologist does this job of identifying the cause, looks at the parents getting involved in alarm therapy, getting the child 1 to 2 hours after the first sleep, looking at a gap between the dinner and the sleep pattern, but at the same time work on other aspects. And those aspects are the medical management, or there are medicines available today which with a huge safety arm could gradually in the journey brought about an aspect of care which would bring them dry. So when they start turning dry, which happens over few weeks to few months, it gets better and better for them. So on one side the behavioral therapy, the other side the pharmacotherapy, some kind of a treatment which your urologist would take it forward, is important to probably reach the society, because parents think that children should drink 2 glasses of milk at night, and if you drink, you already are bedwetter, you will continue to bedwet. So is it necessary that we continue to drink a lot of liquids at night in children who are bedwetting? Very important. It also is important to identify that the child is not constipated. It is important to identify that if one parent has a history of bedwetting, the child will have a chances of bedwetting in the region of 14 to 30%. If both the parents had bedwetting in their childhood, it's possible that the child will have a bedwetting as a result of 45 to 50% incidence, which means that if both the parents were having a genetic modality of that, children may bedwet. So friends, bedwetting is a situation of agony and discomfort, both for the family and the child and a growing child. Giving examples, sometimes parents and maybe doctors and the society may forget, and these children continue to bedwet even at the age of 13, 14, 15 years. It's time to go to a hostel right now, and you would not like to go to a hostel. Why? Because you do bedwetting in the home. There are people who have gone beyond that to 17 to 25 years and also intermittent do bedwetting. I've had patients who actually have come in, I am of the age of 23 and 25. It's time to get married, but I don't want to get married. I do bedwetting alternate day, every day, twice at night or twice a week. So for us to improve the quality of our future citizens and our young buddies, it's important for us to identify the quality of life of individuals who actually go through a very silent agony. They may not be able to speak up. Parents speak for them, but many a times parents may be ignorant. And that ignorance is never a bliss. Awareness is what we are driving today. Awareness about bedwetting or enuresis is an important aspect that needs to be taken to the society and make people understand that let us not allow bedwetting to happen in children between 6 to 15 years. These children are potentially treatable and curable. Once we have cured them, a small subset of patients may probably come back with a secondary bedwetting or secondary enuresis. So a child was dry all his life, and suddenly at the age of 8, 9, 10 years, we suddenly find bedwetting happening. And that is where the change could be something else. And therefore a doctor will have to spend time, look at the parents, discuss with the parents, the children, and the larger environment of the child, including the teachers too. There's a possibility the child is going through a psychological trauma. The child is going through possibly an abuse. There is a change in the psychology of the child because the child had a change of school. The child probably has a change of city. The child is not happy with what is undergoing around. That kind of a stress can sometimes bring about secondary enuresis, or when the child was dry for some years or completely, suddenly starts bedwetting. There's a psychological trauma happening in a very subconscious mind which a child may not be able to tell, and that has to be identified. So all secondary bedwetting or secondary enuresis after a periods or years of dryness could be for those children where we need to spend a more amount of time to identify. So friends, it is important for us to identify that the child is not constipated, the child is not having leakage at the school, which is the daytime leakage, the child is not bedwetting multiple times at night and multiple times a week, and therefore we need to reach out schools, we need to reach out parents, we need to make them identify that this is an entity which is treatable and curable in medical science called enuresis of bedwetting, and all parents from this channel need to identify that if the child is bedwetting, in your cities and towns are pediatricians, urologists who are keen to identify and look at that your child does not finally feel that I don't want to go to school, I drop school. I'm scared to go to school because I'm bedwetting. I get scolded, and it's not through any fault of mine because I'm sleeping deep and tight. I get up in the morning, I get up at night, and I'm bedwetting. So bedwetting is quite an unrecognized kind of a situation, which means if it is unrecognized by the family, unreported or underreported to the medical society, and therefore underdiagnosed and undertreated, it continues to be an agony for the child and a growing child who could be a better performer. Let's take bedwetting by the storm. Let's help out our children to get better in their quality of life by not having leakage of urine or bedwetting at night. Thank you so much.